You are not the next Critical Role. But if you want to be the next Critical Role, you need, at absolute minimum, one of these two things. There are a lot of you who are streaming Dungeons & Dragons on both Twitch and YouTube and various other live streaming platforms, and you have goals and aspirations to make it as big as Dimension 20 and Critical Role. I know you do. Trust me, I want you to as well, but there are fundamental things that none of you have that Critical Role had when it got started that you don't have, and these are why you will never ever be the next Critical Role. And before I get into what those two things are, I want to tell you something else as well that you all need to hear. Watching Dungeons & Dragons from a viewer's perspective is one of the most challenging niches to get into, because you cannot click on one random live stream and just instantly get involved and know what's going on. For a vast majority of other live streams, you most definitely can. You can click on a live stream if you don't know the streamer, but you at least know the game, so you are familiar with it that way. Or a cooking stream, or an art stream, if they're baking something that you enjoy, or if they're drawing a picture of a character that you enjoy. You at least have an in, and you can get involved that way, and then slowly get yourself accustomed to the stream as a whole. That doesn't work with Dungeons & Dragons streams. Jumping into a brand new Dungeons & Dragons stream is like turning on an audiobook, except you're already missed the first 12 chapters and you can't stop it and you can't go back. It's just going. You don't know this author, you don't know the book, you don't know the story, you don't know the characters, and viewers are not going to spend the time to go all the way back and try and get everything they need so they can get caught up in a brand new Dungeons & Dragons stream if they don't know anything about it. And I'm sorry, but that's your stream. That's all of your streams. Dungeons & Dragons is the hardest niche to both break out into for live streaming and also for a viewer to get into, because of the amount of work a viewer needs to do in order just to get caught up. This is why any Dungeons & Dragons stream that puts episode 1 or session 1 in their title will have a vast majority more viewers than any other episode they will ever do afterwards. Because you do not need to do any amount of work to get involved right from the beginning. You already are being told everything as it happens, but the moment you miss that first episode, you now have to do homework and figure things out, or just hope you can figure it out as you go. And for a vast majority of Dungeons & Dragons streams, that doesn't work. So now that you know how hard it is for a viewer to get into your Dungeons & Dragons stream, let me tell you the two things you don't have but Critical Role had when they got started. First things first, Critical Role did not start from nothing. Critical Role did not make their Twitch channel and just start live streaming D&D. They started on an already existing Twitch channel that already had a core audience around that style of content. Critical Role started out on Geek and Sundry, a fantasy nerd culture channel that was already streaming card games and board games and fantasy genre, and they already had a well-established audience that was already there for that niche of content. So live streaming a Dungeons & Dragons game fit perfectly into what Geek and Sundry was already doing, and the audience, of course, already would love a Dungeons & Dragons live stream because they were already somewhere around that idea of content to begin with. And yes, Critical Role did start streaming in the middle of their first campaign, which was very jarring for first-time watchers, but they did give some background to all the characters and a story so far, so that people could at least get somewhat caught up and continue on. But the big thing here was that Critical Role started on Geek and Sundry that already had people there for that type of content. You don't. You are not Geek and Sundry. You are not running a company that is centered around fantasy nerd culture. And the second big thing that Critical Role had when they got started, and still do to this point, but it definitely helped when they were getting started more so than ever, is name recognition. The players and the DM of Critical Role are not just employees of Geek and Sundry at the time. They weren't just random people who played Dungeons & Dragons. Every single one of them is a well-known voice actor. Matthew Mercer, Travis Willingham, and Laura Bailey, and everyone else involved in Critical Role are all very well-known voice actors, and with that name recognition brought in even more people into the live stream. Geek and Sundry not only could pull audience from their core community that they already had, but the name recognition from all these voice actors brought in even more people to the live stream. And unless you or your DM or your players are big names in the social media space or have prominent cultures of their own to bring in with them, You don't have that. And that is why those two things were absolutely pivotal to Critical Role growing as a live stream and as a company. They were able to spring pad off of Geek and Sundry's pre-existing stream and community, and also the name recognition from the players and the DM. You don't have either one of those. You just enjoy the game and you want to live stream it. But if you want to make this a successful live stream and you want to be as big as Critical Role, but you don't have either one of those two, you are fighting one fuck of an uphill battle. It does not matter how good your production is. It doesn't matter your microphones, doesn't matter your cameras, doesn't matter your story. It doesn't matter about any of that. If you don't have a pre-existing audience to draw from or name recognition to pull audience members into, you are starting from scratch. And after episode 1 is aired, you are only making it that much more challenging on yourself to bring in new people as your story continues, and they won't want to get into it because it will be that much more confusing as the story goes on. I am not saying this to be mean. I am not saying this to say fuck you in your live streams. I am saying this because I don't believe in candy coating. I don't believe in bubble wrapping. I believe in the cold hard truth and the cold hard facts. And the facts are, all of you guys who have aspirations to be the next Critical Role, the next Dimension 20, unless you have those two things, you won't make it. And that's the facts. If you just want to live stream D&D just for the fun of it, not to make it a business, not to be profitable, just for the sake of doing so and just for you and your close-knit friends, have at her. Go buck wild, do what you gotta do, and have fun while you're doing it. But for those of you who have the dreams to be the next Critical Role, it's gonna flounder. And it's gonna sink. So what can you do then to become the next big Critical Role? Don't focus on making Dungeons & Dragons live stream content. Focus on making other content around Dungeons & Dragons. Make YouTube videos, make TikTok videos, do live streams about character design, do something around Dungeons & Dragons, but don't make it something that is episodical, something that everyone needs to be able to start from the beginning or they're lost. Make something short form content and more enjoyable content than the long form Dungeons & Dragons campaign that you really want to run. Save that for later. Get your core audience set first, and get a core audience that will eventually, when you do make your Dungeons & Dragons live stream, want to be involved right from the get-go. And this will also feed in to you getting your name recognition, because as you grow, you will grow your name brand and you will become more of an authority within your niche. So not only will you have your core audience to pull from when you start your D&D live stream, but they will also go based off of your name recognition if you get that large. And this is double, triple, quadruple the effect for any players or DM that you ask that also have followings of their own within that niche. And even if their followings are not within that niche, the idea of a Dungeons & Dragons game will be enough of an interest to pull people in. And if they don't like it, that's okay, it's not for them, but at least they checked it out. And if you want to know more about how to live stream a Dungeons & Dragons game, regardless of everything I said here, I'd recommend checking out this video here. You want to get the best equipment possible for your stream so it's enjoyable for people to watch for 3 to 4 hours. This is the very first thing you'll need. Thank you very much to my patrons, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Skål!